Good evening and welcome to, let's see if I'm on.
You're on.
Okay, sorry, I couldn't hear anybody. Welcome to Stillwater Planning Commission regular meeting of Tuesday, July 17th, 2012. It's now called to order. First thing on the agenda this evening under land use items for discussion and possible action is Central Oklahoma United Methodist Retirement Facility, Inc., preliminary planned unit development, PZ-12-1642, requesting review and approval of a preliminary PUD for a retirement community known as The Ranch, an Epworth living community and consisting of multiple buildings on property currently addressed and zoned as 6221 excuse me, West 19th Avenue, RSS residential single family small lot, and 6523 West 19th Avenue, RSS PUD residential single family lot with planned unit development. And Tom, I see here that the applicant has requested to table this item again.
Yes.
They'd just like me to read it every week. Is that what they want? I about have it memorized. Okay, so they're requesting that we table it to the August 7th meeting?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And we need a motion for that? That's fine by me.
I move that we table.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cindy, you've got that? And that item is tabled until this August 7th, and I'll see if I can't read it verbatim next time by memory. Next item under Plans, Policy, Ordinance for discussion and possible action this evening is adoption of 2012 revised zoning map for the elimination of the RM, which would be the multifamily residential zoning district, and adding 4 multifamily districts, which would be RTM, two-family and multifamily, RMI, multifamily intermediate, RMU, multifamily urban, and last but not least, HR, which would be high-rise. Good evening, Patty.
Good evening. Patty Evans, Development Services. On May 21st, 2012, the City Council approved and adopted a text amendment to the Land Development Code to make changes to the multifamily zoning district. Ordinance 3180 eliminates the RM, multifamily residential zoning district, and adds 4 multifamily districts. As Becky said, the RTM is the two-family and multifamily, RMI, the multifamily intermediate, RMU is the multifamily urban, and HR is high-rise. Now that the ordinance is in effect, a zoning map that reflects those changes in the multifamily zoning needs to be approved and adopted. This is the zoning map that incorporates the 4 new multifamily categories. And I know this is very difficult to see what has been changed, so I do have a map with just the multifamily on it. The previous one is the one that you will be approving, but I just broke it down so you can see where the multifamily is and what we did. The one on the left is the property or the properties that are zoned, formerly zoned RM, the multifamily. The red line is the city limits, so you can see they were all over the city from north to south and east to west, except the over here on the right that shows the highest concentration of multifamily zoning, and that's south and east of the campus. And the way we changed this changed or determined which district they would go in was just by density, by address. If they had 25 addresses, then they were RMI. If they had 20 or less, then that was RTM, and that's what we did. Our findings include a text amendment to the Land Development Code eliminating the RM zoning district and adding 4 multifamily districts was approved and adopted May 21st, 2012. And a revised zoning map that visually reflects the approved text amendment is proposed. Are there any questions?
I might just clarify something for the audience, Patty.
Okay.
What was adopted actually on the zoning classifications, did council take it from what this body had recommended, or there been any recommendations or changes?
No, it was what this body recommended.
Very good then, thanks. And so basically what we've done here is we've just brought to date up to the map to reflect our actual coding or zoning.
Yes,
We've
correct.
just colored the map up.
Yes.
Okay, very good then.
Have you got any input from any outside developers calling, adding any recommendations to?
I have one
the map?
right here. He'll be speaking in a
Sure, we'll
moment.
hear something then.
I bet we will, Patty. Well, I will say this before we even get into it. I don't know, Patty, you might address it a little bit. With it going from an RM to breaking into 4 categories, you did that kind of with what was around it with the circumventing zoning borders? Is kind of how it was derived at?
Well, we took each property that was zoned RM and would look at the addresses or what the use was. Some of the RMs are like nursing homes and parking lots. Some are just parking lots. Well, the only multifamily zone, well, not the only, but RTM doesn't allow parking lots alone, so I had to move that up to RMI. But each parcel, we have an address layer, and I turn that on, see how many addresses are in that parcel, try to eliminate any that just went to water meters or anything like that, and were just addresses of dwelling units.
Gotcha.
And that's how we figured the density. RTM is up to 20 units per acre. RMI is up to 30 units per acre. RMU is up to 50 units per acre, and then high-rise is over 50, between 50 and 150 units.
And what was the regular, just for, what was regular RM? Was that 25?
Yes, that was 25 units per acre.
Okay. Sounds logical to me. Any other questions for Patty?
One quick clarification, and we may get this answered here pretty quick, but
Okay.
if we had something that was just rezoned previously, moved to RM, and they're in a low zoning classification on that RM, and they wanted it to be higher, if it goes through council and gets approved, they would have to ask for a rezone then.
Right.
To get more to,
And that is the case of the gentleman that's going to be talking here. He had a rezoning of property 3 months ago or something, 2.5, 3 months ago, to the RM before we even had this ready to come to you, you know, the ordinance or anything. So the only way I had to go, only thing I had to go by was what was on there now, how many addresses, and that's why he was zoned the way he is,
Okay.
and he wants a higher
Okay.
zoning, and so he's going to request from this body to move it up to a higher zoning.
okay.
Okay? Any?
Oh, gotcha. I think I'm good. It sounded very logical to me, and I'm going to assume when the thing has already taken place, all we've done is matching the map to what we've already done, and we'll probably just have to go with these on individual basis, so I look forward to hearing from the first complicated thing we have.
Okay. Okay.
With that, I'll open it up, public hearing, and ask for anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of this map amendment.
Hello, my name is David Beers. I'm the owner of Cowboy Cove Mobile Home Park, 1900 North Washington. I live at 1418 East 4th. And like Patty was saying, we got rezoned, and it was 25. We were anticipating to ask for more density there than what we had. As far as the addresses go right now that's in there, it's a mobile home park. And we've been, as soon as we can, we'll evict a person and remove them from the trailer park so that we can, we're anticipating, building apartments there for students.
Where is your
And-
property? I'm sorry, David.
1900 North Washington, it's right in front of the Christian Villa.
Gotcha. I remember. Thanks.
Okay.
I'm with you.
And what we're going to request is that we get intermediate or urban.
Would that be an RMI
Yes, ma'am.
up to 30?
We'd prefer to have the urban. I don't think that Patty's real thrilled about that, so we'll
I think
ask.
that's a big leap across the canyon. But one can always wish in one hand, spin the other. I mean,
There we
whoever
go.
knows how it's going to happen, right?
Right. But, like I was saying, we'd be happy to have the intermediate RIM zoning that would give us 30 units per acre right there.
Do we can we actually grant that, or does he have to? Just 1 second.
Okay.
for me.
Council will actually grant it, but you can recommend that the zoning at this
Along
location.
with
Along with the approval of the map.
gotcha. We can discuss that or
Okay.
try to get it in. I think we have an availability to get you corrected this evening.
Corrected. Okay.
Question, you're speaking in favor of this rezoning?
No, I want to have it moved up.
His parcel.
My parcel
So
moved
you are
to,
not speaking in favor of this, is
Well,
right.
it-
I'm just trying to preserve the zoning that we,
With an adjustment, there you
we're
go.
having a discussion, and
99%.
he'd rather be positive than be opposing.
okay, I
you
just,
know?
well, I was just trying to sense
I'm sorry,
where the agreement
Commissioner
was.
Merrifield's just used to the opposition, so you've shocked him in your support. No, I hear it, and I do appreciate you coming down here this evening. I remember you being here a couple of months ago, and with change, you are going to be one of the first people that's kind
Okay.
of caught it. So again, we appreciate your time and you coming back down.
thank you for y'all's time. Do you have any more questions, or?
I think it's quite, I'm good with it.
I have maybe a Mr. Dorman question.
Oh.
But is there any notification that you have to do on top of this if this map is out and then he wants to rezone? Is there any notification to the area? Nothing?
No, because this is a map, we're revising the map as opposed to revising a specific location on the map. We do notification only by publication.
Okay.
And the idea of having the hearing after this is to make these adjustments. So his coming and asking for an adjustment is appropriate in this context.
Okay.
Good. Thank you,
Thank
David,
you.
very much. Anybody else in the audience like to speak in favor of this map amendment? Seeing none, we'll close that portion. Anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, Patty? We'll have your alternatives, please.
Okay. First alternative is find that the proposed zoning map is needed and recommend that the city council approve the proposed zoning map as presented. And number 2, find that the proposed zoning map is needed and recommend that the city council approve the proposed zoning map with identified changes. Any other questions?
I think it was a good color-up job.
Thank you.
You stayed right in the lines. You get a smile at me. And I
Easy to
believe-
do on our.
And I believe Paula
on our
helped you.
shows.
So thank you, Paula. She's out in the audience for those that can't see her. Thank you for your time on that. Discussion? Motion?
I don't have any problem with the request from gentleman at 1900 North Washington. So I move that we go to alternative number 2, which is in favor of this with the one minor adjustment at 1900 North Washington.
And that's to rezone it to RMI?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Do you have a second, Cindy?
Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
We may vote. Oh, and that did pass. Good luck, and thank you again for your time. Okay, next item on the agenda this evening is text amendment PZ-12-1663 to Stillwater City Code, Chapter 10, Article 3, Section 10-54, related to the 2009 International Building Code, Article 4, Section 10-90, related to the 2009 International Residential Code, Article 5, Section 10-111, 10-112, and 10-113 related to the 2009 International Property Maintenance Code, Article 7, Section 1034, 1035, and 1037 related to the 2009 International Existing Building Code, Article 8, Section 10-289, also 10-290 and 10-291 related to the 2009 International Building Code, or Plumbing Code, excuse me. Article 9, Section 10-374, 10-375, and 10-376 related to the 2009 International Fuel Gas Code. Article 10, Section 10-396, 10-397, and 10-398 related to the 2009 International Mechanical Code, We're almost there, guys. Article 1, am I still on Article 1? I scratched it out. Article 11, Section 10-485 and 10-486 related to the 2011 National Electric Code, and Chapter 20, Article 3, Section 20-49 and 20-50 related to the 2009 International Fire Code. Nobody say what?
Could you repeat that?
Start at the top.
Good evening, Mr. Roberts.
Good evening.
Go right ahead. It's your dime now.
All right. We've provided you with a staff report with some background to this. As you will notice in the attachments, this is a pretty lengthy set of documents, as read by the chairperson here. This is the culmination of over a year of work from the Building Trades Board to review our local construction codes for update and local amendment. Part of the context of this review had to do with the fact that the state of Oklahoma now has adopted construction codes for statewide implementation, and that local jurisdictions are required to, if they adopt codes, to adopt those same codes that the state has adopted and the amendments that the state made to those codes. So part of the process that the board went through was to determine what the various changes were in all these different codes over the last 6 years of the code cycle, to determine how they would affect us locally here in Stillwater, local accepted construction practices, what impact that might have, and to also review the state, what the state has done to those various codes and the amendments that they have made. And so within that, again, within that context, with stakeholder input, as we've been holding these hearings over the last, or these review meetings over the last year plus. Some of that has been a little tedious. As you may have looked at the documents, it can get a little tedious, but they have worked their way through it and reached a consensus on recommendations to the City Council for updating and amending our local codes. I would just like to say, as a sidebar, that most of the amendments that we would be making to these codes fall into two general areas. Most of them, they fall into changes in administrative requirements as far as permit requirements, inspection requirements, and trying to make all of the code, the construction codes, homogeneous with requirements for Board of Appeals and things like that, and authority of the building official, those kinds of changes. And then the other general area that they fall into are making our local code amendments the same as what the state has recommended. That said, there are a few amendments that the board has recommended that may be less restrictive than the state requirements in a few instances, and in a few instances they would be more restrictive than the state requirements. In those instances where they're more restrictive, I want to be sure that the Commission understands that those amendments have been in our code previously. They would not be new amendments. Our local folks are already used to those requirements, and it wouldn't be creating an impact on them because it's more restrictive. They're already used to complying with those requirements. And again, as I mentioned, in a few instances where our local amendments may be less restrictive than the state, we don't believe it's in the area or arena of life safety, and that we don't think that we would be challenged by the state commission, Uniform Building Code Commission, on their interpretation that our amendments were less restrictive than the state. So I would like to say, as I mentioned previously, the board put a lot of time in on this. I congratulate them for the work that they did and the meticulous nature of that. Just for the record, I think it probably, to give credit where credit is due, I'd like to just name the members of the board that have sat through these hearings. Kyle Kelty, Robert Williams, Eric Upaka, Norma Jean Shamlin, Shirley Weeks, Daryl Craybill, Rusty Craybill, no relation, Waylon Shields, and Kevin Rayboard. So we are bringing this package to you this evening as another opportunity for stakeholder input and public comment. I have tried in the staff report to identify at least one area where it probably does touch the Planning Commission as far as development in our community is concerned. That has to do with the area in the change in the fire code for the minimum requirements for cul-de-sacs and turnarounds for fire department access. Just to capsulize here, in the past, there has been a one-size-fits-all approach to the requirements for dealing with turnarounds, and this has to do with making an area large enough for our largest piece of fire equipment to be able to turn around and exit from a dead-end street. That one-size-fits-all approach was not only in our local amendment that we had already previously adopted, it was also in the fire code. There's a one-size-fits-all approach in the fire code. After the board discussed it, we felt like it was more appropriate, and the board felt like it was more appropriate to recognize there are differences between commercial and industrial construction and the needs for access, and residential development, such as you'd find in typical 1- and 2-family subdivisions, and the need probably in commercial and industrial applications to be able to get larger pieces of equipment in and out of those developments. And so that's what the board recommended, is this two-prong approach that would provide different requirements for those different types of developments. And as also in that recommendation, they've recommended adopting an appendix in the fire code that deals with a number of fire department access issues, including when you would be required to provide more than one access into a subdivision, for example, based on the division or the density of that subdivision. And so it provides some good direction for us to look at those kinds of developments and not be arbitrary or capricious, more prescriptive in nature by having those requirements adopted in the code. With all of that said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have related to the packet and the proposed package that the board is recommending.
One real quick one. First, I just want to say, I think the highest of Mr. Roberts and his work and his team and the Building Trades Board, all the work that they've done. I know this is quite an undertaking that they've done, but if this goes through and council sees it maybe next month or something and it gets approved there, where do you see, is it going to be on the website where we have the local amendments? Where can local trades pick up on this knowledge, and how quickly is it going to get implemented into?
Well, as quickly as it becomes, well, I want to couch that in the terms that our policy is that when these codes are adopted, we'll send a contractor notification to all the contractors. And in that is a 90-day grace period. And we allow that time for voluntary compliance, that first 90 days after the effective date of the ordinance, for contractors to become used to the new requirements. And we can, on inspections in the field, we can tell them that, hey, this is changing. You need to be aware that going forward, you're going to have to change that. And then after that 90-day period, then it becomes mandatory to comply with the new requirements. So there'll be the contractor notice. As well, hopefully all are familiar with our new city homepage and the website, and we hope that it's much more user-friendly than it has been in the past. And all of this information will be on Building Safety's webpage for the code adoptions where you'll identify all of the local amendments. And something that's really great is that we now have found a link to the model code writing organization, to their library, where if you as a contractor click on that, you can go and into any model code, the building code, residential code, plumbing, fuel, gas, etc., and you can view that online. It's read-only, but you have that immediate access if you have internet access to look at the codes and read what the codes say. So we think that's going to be a great tool for the contractors to have that available to them.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Madam Chair, if we were to approve the text amendments, it goes to council and goes through, and then let's say 2 to 5 months down the line, a major issue comes from this, unbeknownst to anyone's thought processes here, and we have 2,000 people with signs here or something.
No, it'll be at the council meeting. They don't make signs for commission. They go to council, Joe.
I assume this procedurally, nothing is in stone theoretically, or is there a review process that goes?
Mr. Roberts might be able to answer a little bit better, but it's
Yeah.
updated. It's updated every, what do we update this, 3 years, 4 years?
Technically, and going forward, because the state now adopts it and it's reviewed every 3 years in the state cycle, then hopefully, we were a little late. in that.
Right.
We had to actually skip a cycle, which made it the review that much more complex because we were reviewing 6 years of changes rather than just 3 years of changes. But yes, it does occur every 3 years. We will be going through this process again in 3 more years, but hopefully it'll be much quicker the next time because I don't anticipate all of the different changes that we've looked at this time. To answer your question, yes, we had the public process through the Building Trades Board with stakeholders coming and having their input. This is another opportunity for that, and there'll be another opportunity when it's presented to the city commission or city council for their review. That's not to say that there won't be unintended consequences that we might identify later. And again, it's sometimes hard to predict what that might be. That's why it's an unintended consequence. But say, for example, there's an issue that comes up with this new requirement for turnarounds, for example, and people decide, that's not really working for us here locally. Then there's always the process to begin that discussion to change the code again, amend the code here locally to correct some of those issues as we identify them. We don't have to wait. I guess what I'm saying is we don't have to wait 3 more years for the code review cycle to happen again before we can come back and address issues that might be a problem when we adopt it.
Not. I was just thinking, I get 28 phone calls at home and rationalize that and see that it does seem to be something that might need discussion, and so.
Well, and I'm going to kind of reiterate on Joe's point, and I don't mean anything by it because I think this, for those of you at home, it's a pretty good-sized document that they've worked on. And again, the community's worked on it. It's had a lot of input from the builders. I've talked to several of them that have had a chance to review, and the developers here. I don't know that we always get these things right, but what I would request, and it's just a friendly request, and Patty, I hope your ears are perking up too. But when this commission is looking at something like this, or even as daunting as what this can be on a read, because you might think it's exciting read, but jeepers, it's brutal. But with that said and done, I might like to see the Planning Commission go into like a training or a study. We used to have quarterly trainings, if not monthly trainings, because it would be nice, especially for Joe being kind of new and never seeing a document like this before. And he's a layman out there that's not necessarily working with it, but it would be nice to be able to have a conversation so that he might even be able to understand it more, or I might be able to ask something or something like that. And again, it's not a fault, it's just a suggestion. And even I'll go back to the zoning map that we had this evening. It was fairly hard to see, And I thought very logically, Patty, you made a wonderful presentation, not to try to change the subject. You made a wonderful presentation, but I'd like to see a bigger map. And I would have liked to have known what some people's thoughts were once we could actually see those barriers and things. So just a suggestion, but my hat is off to the document and the people. When you tell me the people that were in that board, if they can agree upon something, I'm pretty sure I can go ahead and pass it like this. I do have one question for Dusty, though, and I apologize, he's ill this evening. Hope he gets to feeling better. He wanted me to make sure, and I thought I had it marked, and to tell you the truth, I don't know where I've marked it now, that single family homes and duplexes, there's not a sprinkler requirement on those.
No.
Yes.
That was in the code that when we adopted the International Residential Code last year.
Right.
That exception was already put in that document when we adopted it. So, yeah.
Very good. He just wanted that for clarification. So, and again, one wonderful document from what I could tell, and all that I read and I read and I read.
And I would like to just point out that one of the alternatives that we have suggested for the commission this evening is, if you're not comfortable with the time that you've had to review this document, one of the alternatives you have is to recommend tabling it and bring it back again when you've had more time to adopt it or review it. We're not under a considerable amount of pressure. We would like to get these codes adopted because the state, their adoption became effective on the 15th of this month. And so we would not like, we don't want to lag too far behind what they've done. And our goal was to try and get it to the city council next month sometime. But again,
I feel very comfortable with the document. I'm just saying that I think this body could take one more step, and we certainly could have training. And when we're bringing new on, and from what I understand, 2 weeks ago, council has suggested, if not already executed, a larger number up here. And when that happens, we are going to get people of the profession that don't deal with these type of codes and reading this type of material. So a little bit of education goes a long way, and a meeting and a lunch. And I think even an hour discussion that we could have had in an open meeting situation, not necessarily down on Tuesday night, way a bit of it. And I'm just making it for the future. Again, I feel very comfortable with the document. Any questions or comments off of that? Thank you. Okay, at this time, I'd like to open up the public hearing and ask anybody in the audience like to speak in favor of the updates to the International Code in 11 sections. Getting thumbs up from everybody, but nobody's coming forward. Okay, seeing none, anyone like to speak in opposition? Seeing none, we'll close that portion and ask you to come back with your alternatives.
thank you. As we identified for you, I believe at least three of the options that you have are option number one would be an recommendation to a motion to make a recommendation to the City Council that you recommend these changes that have been recommended by the Building Trades Board. Option number two would be to adopt a motion to make a recommendation to the City Council with any suggested changes for staff to incorporate into the language. Option three would be to just simply table it at this point until you've had more time to study.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you again for a very nice, conclusive presentation. And thank those people that served on the board, would you?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. With that, any discussion or motion?
I move for approval with no changes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And that does pass this evening 4-0 with Dusty being absent. Thank you again for your time. Just a couple of house cleaning announcements. Approval of the regular meeting summary of June 19th, 2012. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review those? Any comments, questions, changes?
Question.
Okay.
Have we ever, I've never been on a board where we don't ever have changes to these minutes.
They do sometimes. Sometimes we vote differently.
In my tenure here, we've never had one single letter out of place.
Did she get your vote right?
I've been trying to read that to find something, just to make it look like I'm paying attention.
She'll also take a typo. Did you find a typo?
Nothing.
A misspelled word?
Clean and
A
green.
number wrong?
I just think
That's
that's
because-
worthy. It's nice. It's a neat thing, but hats off theirs.
She's obviously not writing down everything we're saying.
I-
There's no bleep bleeps here, Cindy.
Maybe that's it.
So, Joe, would I take that as
I
a
would
motion
move to approve.
Second.
These guys up here, they're fast on their seconds. And those minutes do pass. And just one quick announcement. Next Planning Commission meeting is going to be August 7th, 2012. And hopefully, we're going to be able to see Epworth, or the rancher. I'll read the first paragraph again. I don't know if you want me to save my paper for tree huggers, but we do look forward to seeing that presentation when they're ready. So anyway, we'll keep it on as long as they'll keep having us keep it on. So with that in mind, Chair would entertain the thought of adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
And thank you. We do stand adjourned.